We're here to talk about the Blue Horizon Profono Phono Amplifier, which costs £995, and it's a solidly built brick of a phono amplifier. Let me bring it to camera, you can have a closer look. There's the front. This phono amplifier handles moving magnet and moving coil. There's the side, as I say, quite brick-like and industrial in its appearance. There's underneath, we have 4 little feet there, and there's the rear. Instead of switches, knobs and the like to change impedance, the Profono actually uses shunt resistors, and I'll explain all about that. But the shunt resistors go here. You're given a wall wart power supply, but instead of the usual barrel connection, this particular one is a DIN connection, and there's the proof of that. Now I have a 3-pin arrangement on the end of my particular wall wart here, but as ever with these things, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, there are spare pin configurations to stick on the end of that. They arrive in a sort of accessories bag for you to attach at your leisure. Now, phono amplifiers are often an ignored species, and wrongly so. I actually see phono amplifiers as part of the actual turntable, to be honest, because they're turntable specific, turntable centric, and without the phono amplifier, the turntable is going nowhere at all. Basically, a phono amplifier has one job and one job only, and that's to amplify the tiny signal that you'll find emanating from your typical cartridge and stylus. Your main amplifier just can't do the job. It's too specialist in nature, too niche, and the phono amplifier has that particular niche job, and basically it amplifies the signal enough for the amplifier then to take over, the glory hunter that it is. Now, as I say, the Profono is a tough looking bit of kit. Well, you've seen it yourself. It's quite dense, it's quite solid, it has an aluminium chassis, but it's the shunt resistors at the rear of the chassis which sets the Profono apart from many other phono amplifier designs. In the box there's a bag, and in the bag you're supplied with 3 pairs of these shunt resistors that, as I say, plug into the rear of the chassis with standard RCA terminations. Offered as dinky plugs, they replace the need for dip switches, which is something I quite like. I dislike fiddling with fiddly dip switches because, well, they're so darn fiddly. The 3 sets of the supplied Profono resistors are rated at 100, 470 and 1000 ohms, and feature a tiny sticker on the rear so you know which is which. If you don't plug in any of these resistors, then the phono amplifier reverts to 47 kilo ohms for moving magnet use. If the supply plugs don't match the rating on your cartridge, then Blue Horizon will supply custom-made resistors absolutely free. That's right, absolutely free. Although you'll need to register your Profono first. Now, I've always been told that dip switches are a good thing because they lower noise when compared to low quality switching that you might find on the chassis itself, especially on lower cost phono amplifiers. It's intriguing that Blue Horizon say that the noise floor can be further lowered by using this shunt resistor system. We will see. The only obvious downsides that I can see here are firstly the extra room that the things demand by sticking out of the rear as they do, and also the possibility of losing the resistors themselves when not in use, but which might be required later. Apart from that, they were very simple to install and use. The Profono is a pretty straightforward phono amplifier, has all the usual sockets on the rear, and has gain for 41, 50 and 61 decibels. Now, I heard a rumour that it was possible to upgrade the power supply on the Profono. As you've seen yourself, the default power supply is a little wall wart switching power supply system, which is fine to get you going. But I've heard that there's an upgradable power supply around and about. So I had a chat with the company, and it said that the upgraded or upgradable power supply is not available just yet, but will be available somewhere around August of this year, 2020, and that'll be made by Isotech. I began sound tests with the 4 Freshman's A Today Kind of Thing, a 4-piece vocal harmony combo backed by an orchestra, and the track Bird Avenue, a short and lively little ditty. As soon as the Profono entered my hi-fi chain, I could hear the noise floor lower, which enabled me to increase the gain, which increased the quantity of information arriving at my ears and meant that very shy detail was now elevated to a more important role in the mix. The result? A rich and complex soundstage with multiple layering of detail ranging from left to right. The mid-range from the Profono was so smooth it just glided across the soundstage without any apparent effort at all. Let's take the vocal harmonies first. After all, it's the star of this particular show. At this price point, it's easy to find a phono amp that can add a little bit of mid-range emphasis, which gives you a slight embossing effect on the vocals, which appears impressive initially, but becomes, well, a little bit tiring over time. The Profono avoided this tactic and instead offered a smooth and easy suite of detail frequencies that were, if anything, more organic in their presentation. More, well, human, I suppose, with an array of textures from the vocal cords, while easily tracking little vibratos here and there. Bass from the percussion on the right channel had real character, naturalistic with a slightly warming bass. The latter wasn't a false reading from the Profono, more a realistic interpretation from the 70s mastering, while the Doors-like organ was both clear and open. In and around that, the secondary cymbal taps were both accurate and precise. What really got me was a glockenspiel, which appeared on the left channel, and the reason that sort of really got me was because of the length of the reverb tails. So every time this glockenspiel went into action, the amount of echo, reverb, that emanated from the strikes was pretty large indeed, large enough to impress me anyway. I then turned to rock and the rather baroque electro-goth outing from Andreas Gross and the LP Borderline Poetry. This high-energy piece was notable again for its complexity, because there was enough air and space available in between instruments and individual frequencies. It's a bit like looking at a rope and then watching someone tease apart the dozens of strands. The same rope suddenly looks busy and quite intricate with its many elements. That's what the Profono brought to music. Its ability to provide insight to the mid-range meant that the musical elements were there to hear and focus upon. On the other hand, you could just zone out and let the whole experience wash over you. But the busy detail was there on tap if you needed it. So what I also mean by this is, for example, on that track, there was a very busy lead guitar, quite loud, quite brash, and yet back in the mix, back in the soundstage, at the rear of the soundstage, was a delicate little tambourine, going 10 to the dozen in the background, but your ear could hear it. Your ear could hear the difference. It could hear the detail behind the guitar, which obviously, again, is one symptom of having a very low noise floor. So what do I think of the Blue Horizon Profono? Well, it's a compact unit, solid, well made, with a purposeful design ethic. The Blue Horizon Profono is easy to install and use, while providing a low noise, high detail, high clarity output. The Profono never really gets in the way. It never imposes itself on the music. It just sort of encourages music along, and it offers a balanced, quite naturalistic signal. A great performer. And if you decide to grab one, you'll have a fine old time, I'm sure. And that's me done. Thank you very much for staying with me to the end of this video. Hopefully you'll join me on the next one. And until then, I will see you soon. Bye bye for now.